brother. What's up?
This is a groovy party, man.
Yeah,
I can
brother. Like,
dig it.
stop. Right on.
What's
Hey,
happening?
man, what's your name? What's up? My man.
Good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. Hey, Calvin, did you feel a heat wave?
Yeah, I mean it certainly felt warmer, which is crazy to say when it's only 15 degrees, not even.
Yeah, well, it's going to get to 25, man.
Oh, flip flop, brother.
25, glorious degrees. Really excited about that. But anyway, hey, the gang's all here. What the heck do we care? What the heck do we care? Hey, the gang's all here. It's Wednesday, and that means we are joined once again by my good friend Robert Miranda Flack, Dr. Yana Lamberdino, from a co-founder of Campaign for Lead-Free Water. It's great to have you back, my friend.
Hello,
And
Earl. Good morning.
and also Paul Swartz, also co-founder of the Campaign for Lead-Free Water. How you guys doing?
Great.
How can you be doing great? There's somebody lurking in the White House. I don't know if we can ever say
that
we're.
feels good.
Oh, that's right. You guys live in D.C.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're in the belly. They're in the belly of the beast.
So Robert, a lot to talk about, as always, this morning. For those of you who aren't aware, that we do this every Wednesday, and it is a great, I think, one of the best things that we do here at the radio station at Civic Media is to have this timely information about your health and your family's health and why it's so important that we continue to do this. So, Robert, we got a lot to talk about this morning. Where you want to begin, my friend?
There are a few. Yeah, we do have a lot to talk about. There are a few things that I want to talk about a little bit in regards to what's going on locally with our water and that whole issue with the lead pipes and all, and then piggyback a little bit on what my colleagues are going to want to address, and that is they're going to talk a little bit about what Trump is doing and the Congressional Review Act that is now being pursued, and what does that mean for our efforts in regards to removal of lead pipes and lead in water. And hopefully, what we will be able to do is get folks to be informed so that they can understand, know the nuances of what is taking place, and begin to inform their neighbors and organize in their communities so that we can get GTLO information out and everybody can come to GTLO and we could get them the information they need so that they can organize a good campaign in their communities to fight back, because that's a fight back is really needed. But before we go over there, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about this Milwaukee Journal Sentinel article that was just recently released regarding the number of water main breaks that have taken place in Milwaukee in the month of January. The article talks about that in the month of January, 50 or more water main breaks have occurred. Now, why this is important is because if you recall, back in 2015, that's the year we started this effort. Before anybody in the community started this matter, we began this effort to expose the hazards and the toxins that are being released in our water caused by lead pipes. And one of the foundation of why we pushed this issue is because back in 2014, the city of Milwaukee in that year experienced historic water main breaks. And former Alderman Joe Davis, who ran for mayor that year and took the fight into 2015, we then started to see the correlation between these historic water main breaks and the beginning of the rise of blood lead poisoning in the community. And that rise in blood lead poisoning began in late 2015 and really peaked around 2017, a couple of years after that water main break. So there was a link that we saw that showed that when water main breaks occur, there was a link that we saw that showed it can impact lead poisoning in our community. And so we got the open records request from the health department to basically see if our theory was right. And lo and behold, compared to years prior, the level of lead blood poisoning reported was not as high. But after the Matter Main breaks issue and the years subsequent to that, uh, the number of blood lead level cases rose significantly. And so we knew there was a link and a tie that needed to show that we need to do something about these lead pipes. And, you know, in this case, this report we felt and we feel was very lacking. Now, before I move on, I want to say that where we were 10 years ago with the Milwaukee Waterworks is nowhere where we are today. There is a lot more cooperation. There is a lot of attempt to communicate. I have to give a shout out to the superintendent of Milwaukee Waterworks for being as transparent as he can be. But I also have to say that the information still being put out by the health department and the waterworks is not sufficient, is not the kind of information the public needs to take the kind of precautionary measures they need to take to protect their families from lead poisoning caused by these lead pipes. And the example of that is Milwaukee Journal Sentinel's article was lacking in informing the community on the proper methods of protecting themselves and mainly focusing on not mentioning anything about using filters. That the filters during these kinds of episodes in an area of the community experiencing water main breaks is paramount to making sure that families are safe from lead poisoning. The other part of the article talks about what areas that have been
Impacted.
devastated, but doesn't really
Right.
talk about uh, what that means in regards to the whole of the community. And this morning, Superintendent Pauly of the Milwaukee Water Works did respond to an email that I sent them last night. And my concern about his response basically, again, reflects that, and that is when he talks about impacted communities, my concern is okay, well, who do you define as impacted communities? Are you talking about a small segment of the community? Or are you talking more of in general a broader segment of the community? Because if you're just talking about a small segment of the community, are you just talking about people who have lead pipes? Or are you just talking about, or are you talking about people who not only have lead pipes, but people who do not have lead pipes? Because these water main breaks impacts the entire community. And so, you know, when we talk about these water main breaks, we have to be certain that the public is getting as much information that they need in order to protect themselves from this toxin in the water system.
So, 855-752-4842, if you're just joining us, it's Wednesday, so that means we're joined by co-founders of Campaign for Lead-Free Water, Paul Swartz and Dr. Yana Lamberdino, along with Robert Miranda of Fresh Water for Life. Let me pose this question, Robert. You know, when when you start getting these kinds of responses back immediately, that is kind of a sign that they're starting to pay a little attention. I mean, if it's incremental at best, it at least shows that they're starting to pay attention to the noise that is being made. Is it safe to say that?
Definitely, there are more people now out there than when we first started moving on this issue 10 years ago. There are more people now out there that are aware of this. So to basically ignore questions or basically ignore inquiries by members of the community in regards to some of these issues that are serious and that are a matter of public health. I think they've learned from 10 years ago that would be a mistake, especially where it comes with the GTLO. The GTLO is not just going to be ignored, and we have proven that before. We are going to press, and we will press to City Hall the way we have done in the past to make them pay attention to the concerns of the community. So I'd rather we communicate, and I'd rather we try to do this in a way that would give us the opportunity to come to some kind of understanding and work out the details that are needed to improve things. But to ignore the community and to just shy away from any questions or ignore any questions, that would be a very bad mistake on their part.
So 855-752-4842, we're going to be talking about, the transition of Donald Trump as the now commander in chief and conversations about, him, you know, doing away or moving infrastructure dollars that have been earmarked by former President Joe Biden that is really, can complicate what we're talking about in having the lead removed from local areas. Without the resources, it's going to be even more difficult. We'll talk about that. 855-752-4842. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show.
Midnight at the oasis. Send your camel to bed. Shadows painting our faces. Traces of romance in our hands. Heaven's holding a half moon, shining just for us. Let's slip off to a sand dune real soon. Kick up a little.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. I am joined once again by Dr. Yana Lamberdino and Paul Swartz, co-founders of Campaign for Lead-Free Water, and my good friend Robert Miranda Flack. Trump kicks off potentially messy fight over Biden's infrastructure money. One of Trump's executive orders could imperil billions in funding for projects that states have already begun working on, some experts say. An executive order by President Donald Trump requiring agencies to stop paying money for two mammoth-era Biden-era laws could bring a wide range of infrastructure, transportation, and energy projects to a halt, including those already delivering jobs to many states. Dr. Lamberdino, your thoughts on whether or not this could impact everything that, you know, you've been fighting for, and the fact that former President Joe Biden, who issued dollars already to address this issue. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Earl, unfortunately, I do think that this can impact the Biden initiative for full lead service line replacement within 10 years in the vast majority of communities across the country, which is disturbing, it's alarming, and I think it exposes that we are entering a chapter in American politics that once again puts in the back burner the interests of the people and the public good. The one thing that I would like to say in connection to your conversation with my colleague Robert Miranda a few minutes ago is that we have seen historically from the water utility industry and the larger water world that has been addressing or pretending maybe to address the problem of lead in drinking water, a tendency to want to limit the problem to maybe only a few groups. It's just those who have a lead service line. It's just those who live in that community. It's just those who this, those who that. And to also have a fundamental aversion to working together with affected communities. And I think that this is a problem that has been central to the ongoing lead in water contamination across the country. And it's also a problem that I think poses as much of a it undermines the water utility industry and water utilities' mission to provide safe water as much as it undermines public health. And I was just very glad to hear about the Milwaukee Water Works quick response to Robert. And I do think that the solution here is that we join together communities and water utilities to address this problem in a scientifically centered and public health centered way. And that this is especially important at a time when clearly I think we're going to have an administration that is not going to be friendly to initiatives that protect public health.
Paul?
Yeah, so I mean, I want to amplify a couple of things. One is that the work of Get the Lead Out in Milwaukee and Freshwater for Life Action Coalition is really central to lift up the voices of people in the community into the policy debates and into how things are implemented in the community. We need more collaboration with communities around the Wisconsin and the country to do this. Really, what we're facing is an existential threat as the balance of power between the legislative branch, which set in motion the programs for the bipartisan infrastructure law, the American Rescue Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, all of which are putting money out into our communities to deal with the lead and water issue, being usurped by an executive that's abusing laws like the Congressional Review Act that allows them to take initiatives in the last couple of months of the Biden administration, freeze them and undo them, and maybe not even allow in the future any undoing of the undoing. So this is a really existential threat. We could have a real diminution of imperfect but important laws like the lead and copper rule, which water utilities have to comply with. And if you don't have the law, it's harder to go ask for the money because there's no mandate to do the activity.
855-752-4842 is the number. Again, once again, we're joined by Dr. Yana Lamberdino and Paul Swartz, of co-founders of Campaign for Get the Lead Out, Robert Miranda of Plaque. And we're going to continue the conversation on the Earl Ingram Show.
With 50 girls to attend him, they all send him the jump back spectacle. But you won't need no harem, honey, when I'm by your side. And you won't need no camel, no, no, when I take you for a ride. Come on, cactus is our friend, he'll point out the way. Come on, till the evening ends, till the evening ends. Midnight at the oasis, sing your camel to bed. Got shadows painting our faces and traces, a romance in our head. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Ooh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Earl, you there?
I hear you, Robert, but I don't hear anything else.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base with Earl just to I wanted to get him on the AWWA track real quick so we can hit on their influence on what's being driven over there.
Yep. Wonder if we lost him somehow.
I don't think so. I think he may have got up and went to the restroom.
Okay.
Robert, can you hear me?
Yes, Anna.
Do you want to go first? Propose that you go first to bring in Awa to the conversation?
Yeah. I'll get it started, and we'll go and go
Great.
from there. They must be doing a news break right now.
I mean, Calvin says live on socials. I don't know what that means exactly, but they'll be back shortly.
Yeah, that means they took a news break.
Just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone. Suzanne, the plans they made put an end to you. I walked out this morning and I wrote down this song. I just can't remember who to send it to. I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you again.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. It's Wednesday, so that means I'm joined by Dr. Yana Lamberdino and Paul Swartz, of their co-founders of Campaign for Lead-Free Water, and Robert Miranda of Get the Lead Out. Robert, before I want to read this quickly. The language in question in one of dozens of orders Trump issued on his first day in office commands agencies to immediately pause the disbursement of funds under former President Joe Biden's 2021 infrastructure law and his 2022 climate structure. That wording could imperil billions of dollars in funding for projects that states have already begun working on. Some lawmakers and policy experts said Tuesday for everything from roads and bridges to broadband and withstanding the effects of climate change. This is a serious affront, and I guess you guys can certainly tell us what people should do and what they should expect. I mean, I see the work going on, Robert, in my community where they're doing this, and they've been doing it and blocks by block. I've never seen the movement like I'm seeing now, Robert, in all the years. But that's because of the infrastructure money. Robert, go ahead.
Yes, it is because of the infrastructure money, and it is because there was an administration that understood the need to remove these toxic pipes because of how it impacts public health. But then on the flip side, on the other side of the coin, is an administration who relies on putting out misinformation and misleading information and opposition to that agenda. And in the case of lead pipes and lead in water, it's the American Water Works Association, the AWWA, who is currently now suing the EPA to basically stop the effort to remove lead pipes in the mandated efforts by the past administration within 10 years or less, and is basically providing the fuel that the Trump administration needs in order to justify its agenda to impact negatively the infrastructure law, where the provisions that pertain specifically to lead pipe and lead and water issues would be negatively impacted. And so the AWWA has been a thorn in the efforts to eradicate our communities from this scourge in our water supply, and continues to play that role to this day. And more of our community needs to know who the players are that are affecting negatively their lives, so that we can understand the political dynamics of how to fight back against these egregious campaigns that are not designed to improve life, stabilize communities, but are just basically designed to enhance profitability for private sector forces that see, in this case, water as a commodity to be controlled and sold to the public, rather than the life-giving nutrient that it is, the supply of water that is for the public.
Dr. Lamborghini, when you look at this and all the fighting that you guys have been doing in progress, you certainly don't allow this to stop you from moving forward. You can't allow this to impede. What's the plan? I mean, how do you proceed staring, this Goliath in the face?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, Earl. Of course, none of what's going on in the White House right now is going to impede our work and advocacy and activism on this issue. In fact, what's going on in the White House at the moment and politically across the country is all the more reason to reinforce our efforts with additional and even stronger and more forceful actions, and more people from communities all across the country. It's important, I think, for people to know that the context of this specific issue that we're talking about here today, which is lead in drinking water, is one in which the people of this country have been victimized for over a century with lead-bearing plumbing, and then for 30 plus years with a federal regulation that has protected water utility interests more than the interests of the people and of public health. The Biden mandate for lead service line replacement was a partially funded mandate, as we all know. the federal government did not offer all the funds needed to replace all these lines, which some water utilities around the country were going to really, because of this underfunded mandate, turn to the very victims of this contaminant who have been hoodwinked for decades, and turn to them to demand that they pay out of pocket for part of these lead service line replacements. So rather than moving in the direction of a new White House that actually fully funds the full replacement of lead service lines across the country, we are now moving in a direction of possibly even taking away the partial funding of the Biden administration. So this is the time to convince Congress that they need to stand by this important regulation of Biden and actually reinforce it and support it. As we know, there's economic benefits to addressing this issue. Mitigating lead from drinking water would actually save more than $8 billion a year in health benefits and at least $2 billion more in infrastructure costs. This is a benefit to cost ratio of 35-1. So it's important that members of Congress understand this, and it's important that we support mayors and water utilities across the country that are already starting to do the right thing and are committed to doing the right thing.
If you're just joining us, I'm joined by Robert Miranda of Fresh Water for Life, FLAC, here in Milwaukee. Dr. Yana Lembradino, co-founder of Campaign for Lead-Free Water, along with Paul Swartz, also co-founder for Lead-Free Water. So Paul, in the face of this, and people who are just starting to just get this life-saving information that we're working to bring to them, people who live in rural areas, how do they respond? How do you begin to respond to this, Paul? It's not like we can get on national television and challenge. There's so many other things that people are looking at. Where does the lead get the lead out? On that list of things that are going to be upended. How do we make sure that this doesn't get lost in the shuffle?
Well, thank you for that observation, Earl. That there's a lot at stake for a lot of people in a number of different directions, and it's going to be hard to break through the noise of the slew of backsliding and the slew of regressive movement by the Trump administration. But on this one, what's going on, as my colleague Yana Lembradino said, is that there's a bill that's been introduced by Gary Palmer, a Republican congressman from Alabama, to have a resolution passed in the House of Representatives that would roll back the imperfect but better lead and copper rule and open up and look at the funding as well. And so what we need to do, because the House is so narrowly controlled by the Republican Party, is look at the overlap with the committee that this is in, which is called the Energy and Commerce Committee, and get water utilities that probably want to get the lead service lines out, right? They don't want to stop the progress, and mayors who may have been reluctant to talk about this or say the right thing, but still want that, like the mayor of Milwaukee and the Milwaukee Waterworks and others of their colleagues around the country, to put pressure on some critical members of Congress. We just need to get 2 or 3 Republicans. So folks in the rural areas of Wisconsin and other places have an outside role to play in saying, we don't want these pipes in our communities either, and that they're harming us as well. And so I think mobilizing those folks to peel off a couple of folks could just stop this in its tracks.
Robert. Go ahead, Robert.
Just to dovetail on what Paul just said, and clearly what needs to also happen is at the grassroots level, the people need to be given the information. People need to be given information like what Dr. Yana Lambredi just said in regards to the cost ratio, in regards to the savings, because that is one of the primary arguments of the American Waterworks Association, AWA, and that is that this costs too much. And usually, when they bring that up, that starts getting people to reconsider things. But in fact, the cost issue is really not an issue. It's just a way of trying to get the public to basically not be as active in their advocacy as they should be in order to neutralize grassroots community organizing from being effective. The more the people understand these dynamics, the better off we're going to be in organizing these efforts to basically shut down any of the opposition's misinformation that they're releasing into the public.
You know, Robert, here in our state and throughout the civic media listening, sphere, uh, clearly trying to uh, mobilize and get information to all of these different people who can then bring that pressure on their elected officials is a key to part of this, right?
It's very much a key to part of this, and for us to be of service to the public, to get to that, I would ask folks to contact the Get the Lead Out Coalition. Go to our website, Get the Lead Out Coalition. We have a web page. Send us an email through that and ask, hey, how can we be a part of what you're doing? How can we provide the information to you? Uh, Email us at the website, Get the Let Out Coalition, and we will definitely get information to you so you can get that disseminated to your neighbors, disseminated to your community, and fight back with science based information, real information that counters the misinformation by organizations like AWWA.
We're going to also give you an opportunity to get the information from, Campaign for Lead-Free Water. We'd be remiss if we didn't give that information to you. We'll do that after. 855-752-4842 is the number. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show.
There's just a few things coming my way this time around.
What would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me? Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song. I will try not to sing out of key. Oh, baby, how you all I need is my love.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. And as Joe Crocker said, I can get by with a little help from my friends. This is once again, I'm joined by Dr. Yana Lamberdino and Paul Swartz, Campaign for Lead-Free Water, along with Robert Miranda. And guys, Dr. Yana, in the face of what seems insurmountable odds, all of us individually need to fight this battle. And so all of the people in our listening audience across the state who may feel that this is more than they can bear, they can certainly reach out to you guys. What is the website, and what would you say to people who look, this is the final nail in the coffin they're willing to give up? What do you say to that?
Well, our website is campaignforleadfreewater, one word.org. And certainly people can also feel free to reach out to us. But I think that in addition to mobilizing, reaching out to Robert Miranda and GTLO and FLAC for public mobilization and activism, the one thing, and I think this is kind of the refrain from every one of our conversations with you, Earl, is that the immediate use of lead certified point of use filters is just so important. Because the use of lead certified point of use filters, and we're talking about filters that have two certifications, NSF 42 and NSF 53, is an immediate way to effectively reduce significantly, if not eliminate, lead from tap water. People should be using these filters routinely when they draw water to drink or cook. And certainly parents and teachers, administrators should make sure that these filters are installed and used in all schools. So that's the immediate, I think, action for people to take. And I wanted to turn this over to Paul, because I think you had some thoughts also about the larger picture of this.
Yeah, so in addition to the health protective measures that people can take today, obviously it's a political and policy fight that we're in, and we need to enlist the listeners here in that fight and get the information. One thing about the water utility industry is that they're not always all quite in alignment, and there's an association of the big metropolitan water agencies called the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies, like Milwaukee and here in DC Water, Milwaukee Water Works, that have been really looking for more funding from state and federal sources. That might seem like a big lift, but I think getting together with those water utilities who are saying we're on the task and we need public support to do this is really, really important. And so, people understanding that all of this is at risk, we should be getting a little help from our friends in Milwaukee Water Works and in their sister agencies, small and large, around the state of Wisconsin and nationally. And I think people having some dialogue with those agencies, the right thing, and to support this request for funding could be really helpful.
Robert, as we progress in this new year, we just want to let people know that we've got some great news that'll be forthcoming real soon about what we're doing. And so, Robert, what do you want to say as we get ready to wind up for this morning show?
Well, again, it's very important for us to be in tune with what's taking place when it matters to lead pipes and lead and water. We have to be up to date on the information on this because information is going to be key, and for us to understand the dynamics of what's going on is going to be key for effective advocacy. And once we identify who our opposition forces are, we have to let the public know these folks are not acting in the best interest of your family or of the community. And for information to come from those kinds of organizations is information that must be exposed, and the information that we get from peer-reviewed science is the information we want to put forward to move this action and move this advocacy forward effectively.
All right, guys, thank you. Looking forward to seeing you again next week and continuing this, to me, life-saving information that we're going to be bringing to the audience. So I want to let everybody know up next, Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action. Trump priorities pose stark contrast to Martin Luther King's vision of equality and opportunity for all people. Up next on the Earl Ingram Show.
Getting high, I'm gonna make a time, oh no. Gonna get by with my friend.
It's time to get organized with Dr. Craig and Citizen Action. Working for democracy and taking on economic, racial, and environmental issues across Wisconsin and around the United States. Here's Earl Ingram with Dr. Robert Craig.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. Good morning, Dr. Craig. How you doing, sir?
Good morning, Earl. I'm only a 5-minute walk from the White House, so I don't know how I feel about that, but maybe I'm feeling the bad vibes.
I see you survived the inauguration.
Oh, well, I flew in the day after, so saw all the MAGA people crowding the airport to get out of Washington, D.C. So there are a lot of, at this Capitol Hilton, there are a lot of Make America Great shirts still on offer in the gift store.
I want to do this, Dr. Craig. You know, you put this Citizen Action post out on January 20th. Trump priorities pose stark contrast to MLK's vision of equality and opportunity for all people. And let me read a quick paragraph. As Donald Trump begins his second presidential term on Martin Luther King Day, the contrast between the two leaders couldn't be more stark. To highlight these differences, Citizen Action of Wisconsin is co-releasing with Healthcare America Now and America for Tax Fairness a report on the consequences of Donald Trump's massive new round of proposed tax cuts for health care access. Trump and his fellow Republicans in Congress have made it their top priority to slash health care and other vital public services for working families to fund trillions in tax cuts for the ultra-wealthy and large corporations. You know, Dr. Craig, people talked about before the election what he was going to do. And here you clearly believe that he is going to follow through with cutting Medicare, Social Security, planks that many people would have never thought would ever come under assault or under attack. You clearly believe that this is going to be happening.
Now, the thing that is most in the crosshairs of all those things are Medicaid. And Medicaid is Badger Care in the state of Wisconsin for our healthcare public health coverage program, which is extremely popular, but also includes long-term care for seniors and people with disabilities, a number of other services. A lifeline. Over half the a huge percentage of the babies born in this country are born with Medicaid funding. So there's no coverage for the mother without it, because increasingly our extremely expensive healthcare system is unaffordable for people. As you have a job that provides you good healthcare, or you're Medicare eligible, or you're out of luck. I was going to say, or if you're poor, but of course this is what's under threat. So I just stepped out of a briefing from Capitol Hill staffers, Democratic Capitol Hill staffers, and about this, and they reaffirm that Medicaid is their number one target because they think they need it to fund the giant, making the Trump tax cuts permanent and adding to them, and adding another $5 trillion in debt, in addition to slashing these vital programs. And so this is on the fast track. This is something they want to do by April. There's some dispute whether it'll be one bill or two bills. They'll do it through budget reconciliation, but they're talking early February, having budget instructions that guarantee massive cuts to Medicaid that'll throw millions of people off their health care. So we're talking about things such as a per capita cap. Now, what that would mean is that states will be limited to a certain amount of Medicaid money per person. It's a way of massively cutting Medicaid because they'll set it too low and then they'll never raise it. And so the thing to understand about Medicaid and Badger Care in Wisconsin is it is a federal state partnership program. So this in Wisconsin, the federal government pays 60% of the cost of Badger care. So imagine if the federal government started paying 40% instead. What would be the cuts to Badger care given our state budget process and the difficulty of funding education, funding our schools, etc.? So just think about that state by state by state. The one thing to consider here also is that they have such tight margins. It doesn't take many Republican governors or many members of Congress who are Republican to get cold feet or feel they might lose their reelections over this, and to prevent this from happening. And this is what happened when they tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act in 2017, the first early Trump administration. So we've seen, Earl, the shock and awe, right, where Trump is trying to show dominance by having the 100 executive orders. Remember, he was shock and awe at the beginning of the last term, and he got the one thing he did get done is these massive tax cuts, many of which sunset in the next year. And so trying to make those permanent and make them worse at a time when income inequality is greater than it has been since the 19th century in the United States. And so we're going to give the people who are doing the best and are taking most of the proceeds of our growth, give them even more, and then take healthcare away from people, Earl.
If you're just joining us, it's Wednesday at 9:00. That means I'm joined by Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action, who, as we speak, is on Capitol Hill and having conversations and dialogue about what's to come. Dr. Craig, I was reading where Elon Musk and Doge and where the bullseye is, they said $800 billion of spending that is being wasted, and they kind of used and misused by the poor. And so one of the things that they want to cut immediately, and they've already come up with a plan, is SNAP benefits and other things, Dr. Craig, like health, like Medicare and Medicaid, and things that are lifelines for people. And many of the people who supported him are going to be devastated by these cuts, Dr. Craig, and they don't even know yet that they're coming.
We can say that Donald Trump won the election, which he did. Notice I'll say it. I don't know if your right-wing callers will say that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, but there was not a mandate for this, Earl. Medicaid has approval ratings in the 70s. It's extremely popular. Massive tax cuts for billionaires and for big corporations, profitable corporations, are not popular. In fact, there's overwhelming support in any poll you see for making the wealthy pay their fair share and making corporations pay their fair share. What they're testing is whether or not public opinion or what the public actually wants matters or not. They voted to lower their prices. They did not vote to take health care away, take long-term care away from my grandma or my cousin who has a disability, or children who happen to be born to modest income parents, right, who can't get a job that's going to provide the kind of health care that they need. And by the way, even those jobs that provide the health care still provide health care too expensive for a lot of people to use. So the problem's even broader than this. So this is sort of like with the Affordable Care Act. They were not elected in 2016 to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and that became clear, and they couldn't do it. The same thing needs to happen this time, but people also need to know who's doing it. So you have two Democratic congressmen within your listening area of civic media, Earl, not Republican congressmen, who are in swing districts. Congressman Van Orden out in western Wisconsin, who is expected again to have a very tough reelect in 2026, and Congressman Stiles in the southeast corner of the state, who has the closest margin district, and realizes that if he had a strong candidate, he would be at risk too. So these would be very bad votes for them, right? And so it needs to be this is something where constituents speaking out, them getting phone calls, them getting a clear message. Really, listeners should call in and say, I do not want cuts to Medicaid. I do not want cuts to the Affordable Care Act in order to fund tax cuts for billionaires and large corporations, period. And they talk about saving money under Doge. This isn't about saving money. When you talk about SNAP, Earl, you mentioned SNAP. SNAP isn't about saving money. SNAP is about making modest income families and kids go hungry. That's what cutting SNAP is about. And you would think that someone who's worth as much as Elon Musk would have a heart, but that's the problem we're facing. He apparently does not.
Did Donald Trump raise prescription drug prices? Donald Trump has, and people need to be made aware of these things, Dr. Craig. We just were celebrating the fact that Joe Biden had fought these pharmaceutical companies, and we were looking at these changes that were going to make it easier for the elderly to be able to afford their prescription drugs. And now Donald Trump has done what? He's done away with that. President Donald Trump has been accused of raising prescription drug prices for seniors by immediately rescinding former President Joe Biden's executive order to lower costs after beginning to say he did this right away, Dr. Craig. And you'd have to, and people should ask, and the elderly should be asking, including those who voted for him, why did you do that?
Yeah, there was a $2 limit on copays for generic drugs and Medicare, so that seniors could afford all of those generic drugs. It was by executive order. So this isn't everything. This isn't everything that was done in the Inflation Reduction Act that could come by April.
Right.
But why would you rescind that? Why would you say, oh, there's going to be no cap on what Medicare recipients have to pay for generic drugs as far as their copay? Well, because you care more about what pharma and the insurance industry wants than you care about the people who voted for you. It's stark and simple that he would put that in one of those executive orders. He's hoping it gets lost in all of the flashier executive orders that got more press coverage, Earl.
All right, 855-752-4842. Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action, is on the docket. We'll continue the conversation on the other side.
Want some whiskey in your water, sugar in your tea? What's all this crazy question they're asking me? This is the craziest party that could ever be. Don't turn on the lights, cause I don't want to see. Mama told me not to come. Mama told me not to come. That ain't the way that I know.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action, is here. He's already there on Capitol Hill causing trouble. But Dr. Craig, this is Trump fires Coast Guard chief, first woman to lead branch of U.S. military. So, I mean, things, Dr. Craig, that he sat down and, what would be the purpose of firing this woman, the first woman, again? And it's all I can think of, Dr. Craig, is DEI. He hates DEI. He and others don't want there to be diversity in our nation. And so one of the first executive orders was to do away with DEI. He's now suspended people who in the government represent DEI. He's pulled them off the jobs. They can stay home now. They're being paid right now, but he's dismantling all of those things, Dr. Craig, that kind of make America what it should be, and that's diversity.
Yeah, and the problem is, since we're in a fact-free zone when it comes to the Trump regime and the politics behind the Trump regime, and by the way, the Yale philosopher Jason Alexander argues that defines fascism as a political style, not as a structure of government. And so that's where you can see a lot of similarity. We don't know what the outcome will be. But specifically, we don't know about I've never heard of the Coast Guard person that he fired, right? And I don't think most people have. His side's going to believe she must be woke, or she must be some crazy pointy-haired DEI person.
They said she was woke.
Whether she is or not. I mean, it's sort of like she's red, she's a communist. We don't need a proof. It is very much in that old Joe McCarthy style. And the problem is there's no due process. There is no day in court. She is simply fired, and his side will believe that she should have been fired and say, hooray, red meat. It's sort of like when the fans of a failing sports franchise demand that the coach be fired, right? They want some red meat. And so it's ritualistic in that way. We have to be careful with DEI. You see, the voters did not, who understand DEI, did not vote on it either way, right? Because DEI makes diversity work better. It helps people come into majority non-diverse organizations and settings and be able to cope better. And so because we've had problems with turnover where we try to diversify things and then people don't feel it's a hospitable environment, right? It's what it tries to do, but voters aren't demanding DEI, and they aren't, if they understand DEI, if they're not lied to about it, voting to get rid of DEI. So by raising to its defense, in some ways, we lose track of what are the big drivers of inequality, the big economic factors. It's the wealth gap, it's the income gap, right? It's the kind of the quality of education that middle class and upper middle class white kids are able to get versus working class black kids and brown kids, right? And the other challenges they face, the way they're redlined into communities that have more challenges, right? And they have less property tax money to pay for their schools and to pay for everything else. And so by jumping to the bait of DEI, we kind of make his point that somehow it was important and somehow it was radical, when it's far from radical. All these Fortune 500 companies, which are the opposite of radical, they're the people trying to extract everything from the economy, have DEI programs because it helps them get a more diverse workforce that looks like their customers, right? Because it works.
Right.
When it well done, they're failing DEI programs like they're failing governments. There's failing everything. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have DEI. So I am concerned that he does this shock and awe where I'm getting rid of DEI, and then we say, oh, it's awful, but we can that our performance shows his side. Yes, there must have really been something going on there because of the way they reacted, rather than. So I do think to some degree the things he is going to do, like take away the health care of working class people and low income people, right, through Medicaid, like what he just did on prescription drugs. A lot of fixed income seniors on Medicare. Is it really good for them if they don't have a guaranteed only $2 copay on their drug? And what is the basis of getting rid of that other than he is not representing the people he claims to represent, the big crowd screaming? He represents the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry. And that's what the tax cuts are about. And that's all he got done in his first term. And it might be the major thing he gets done in his second term, because even with his attack on birthright citizenship, Earl, even this Supreme Court is going to be hard pressed to uphold the legality of his action.
You know, Dr. Craig, you've been around a little while. You've been on Capitol Hill. You know, what are your thoughts? What is the, you know, it almost appears as we watch this stuff on television that the Republicans are clearly, man, their feet are off the ground, and Democrats are walking around with their backs bent and their heads bowed. Is that what you see?
To some degree, obviously, it's like, you know, Packers lose a big game, Packer fans are going to be a little bit dispirited. It doesn't mean that they've decided the Packers can never get back to the Super Bowl, right?
Right.
And so I talk today where there's a lot of people, a lot of pep talks, right? But people are reminding everyone, as I did via the show, that in 2017, it looked like all was lost in the Affordable Care Act. There was no way to save it. And that wasn't true. It is hard to get things through this government, and they have very narrow majorities, the narrowest majority in the 20th century in the House of Representatives. So they can't lose votes, and they have divisions among themselves because they have a hardcore, even crazier group on, I don't know if you call it right or left, on the far end of their spectrum.
Right.
But there's a lot of gloating, and they're doing an end zone celebration now, but we need to make sure that's the end of it.
All right, 855-752-4842. Guys, hang on. We'll come to you. 855-752-4842 is Wednesday. That means Wednesdays with Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action.
together. Your love and understanding has brought us through stormy weather. I must admit, girl, I haven't always been good, but you stuck by me just like you said you would. Hey, I know that enough is enough, but you shouldn't be talking about giving it up. Turning loose might be right, it seems. The wrong decision will spoil all our dreams. If you don't want to spoil our secret dreams, don't change horses in the middle of a stream.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action, is on the docket. Dr. Craig, before we go to the phone lines, you've been at this for a long time. You know, as people feel like they're giving up, there are people who are devastated at the outcome of this election, and they've withdrawn because they fought hard and they knew what after the outcome. It's hard for them to even imagine what is now the reality. What do you say to people, Dr. Craig, after this tough battle that went on, and now people wake up and Republicans are in total control of everything? How do you keep people, especially in Citizen Action, focused on where we need to go next? Because if we can hear it from what you say to your colleagues and the people who are involved in Citizen Action, maybe that's the message we need to give to those of us across the nation who feel defeated.
Before I answer that directly, just sometimes individual acts, help inspire all of us. I just want to call out the Episcopal minister yesterday in the National Cathedral, who was holding the inauguration prayer service with Trump and Vance in the front row, and appealed for them for mercy. Said there were gay and lesbian and trans children in Republican, Democratic, Independent households who feared for their lives, that there were people throughout the country, young children who feared their parents would be taken away through deportation, and appealed to him for mercy and justice. And she not only was a remarkable act of resistance, she expressed the best in religion, the religion that I believe in, that says that we need to care most about the least among us rather than persecuting them for power and political gain and profit, which is what we're seeing. And we're seeing religion used in service of that. And we saw it Inauguration Day. So I think for Bishop Buttle, which she seems like a very soft-spoken woman, this was probably something very hard for her to do. She was trusted enough to be giving that service. This was clearly out of character, and she felt she was called upon at a moral obligation to stand down the most powerful man in the world and say that to him. And of course, he's fuming and demanding an apology, and all of that, because how dare you affront the great Donald Trump. So I think that can help inspire us. But from a citizen action perspective, people who dedicate themselves to organizing and building power, what you come to understand is that there are always going to be setbacks, right? I mean, ending slavery took entirely too long, decade after decade. So you had to believe that the arc of history bends towards justice if we bend it towards justice. And you can't just lose heart with one setback, right? And there was a lot in public opinion. The public disgust with the status quo, with a country that over the last 50 years has given most of the benefits of economic growth to a few people. That all helped, ironically, elect Donald Trump, because Democrats weren't clear enough, because they're not clear enough all as a whole group in policy this way, that we need to change the economy and intervening it and change the system we have to actually reflect the interest and achieve the interests of average people. And so I think we need to be aware that there is at the moment still what's left of a republic, a representative democracy, and that it is possible to defeat Donald Trump like it's been done before. But it can't just be defeat Donald Trump. It has to be to build something new, to have another great era like the New Deal, like the Great Society, where we're making advances. A lot of social progress froze in the 1960s after the kind of the crash up of Vietnam and the failure to get from civil rights to economic equality, which was Dr. King's final crusade. That's when he was killed during the campaign for a strike, a sanitation workers strike in Memphis, a very exploited group of African-American workers in the Deep South. And so I think that we have a lot of unfinished business in this country, but it's possible to get over this. But we first have to resist what he's going to do, but then that resistance has to lead to a new era of fulfillment, and we have to be prepared for that fight. It's a long hike. It's not just a quick walk in the park.
All right, let's go to Mike from Kenosha. Good morning to you, Mike. Thank you very much for the call. You say what?
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call as always. I'm going to push back a little bit. I'm really one of those guys that are a little pessimistic on our future. I'm one of those guys that for decades got into the fight and fought a fair fight, an aggressive fight based on truth to power. And what I've watched is the American people just kind of become numb to everything. And if it's too complicated, they shut off and don't take anything back. Your guests in the prior hour were talking about the existential threat of lead pipes and toxic water and that kind of thing. I would expand that. The existential threat to America needs to be called out for what it is, and that is it's real. The corporate citizens now are overruling we the people. We've seen this in time and time again. The huge disaster that the Republicans did in Iraq in creating these long wars without paying for them. It was a disaster. The pharma opioid disaster. Wall Street bailouts like we've never seen before, including huge gifts and bailouts to pharmaceuticals, only to turn around and just bend us over, the barrel, so to speak, on pricing. And then finally, we just saw last week the food dye issue. Again, food dye we identified as a problem back in the late 70s.
Yes.
Now they're still going to give these corporate citizens a year and a half to devise a different plan and still inject this poison into our system. Again, the corporate citizens now have overruled the American people. And the messaging, in my opinion, instead of demonizing the Dems, which there's plenty to go around, let's call it what it is. It's been taken over. The courts have been taken over, and that's why you're seeing Donald Trump be so bold and aggressive. We had, the last thing I want to say very quickly is we had mandates for healthcare. We've had mandates for infrastructure. We've had mandates for climate. We've been talking about this for decades. And so Biden comes in there and gets a few of these things done. And one of the first things that happened is all these mandates that you and I and the American people put in Joe Biden in order to get the job done. So all of a sudden, they don't matter anymore. So I don't have a very good optimistic view of the future. I wish I did, because I think the American people have turned into mamby-pamby people that don't know how to protest. They don't know how to get their act together and organize and get these elected officials, get them to do the work of the people.
Hey, Mike, hang on a second. Dr. Craig, there's a lot there. You want to respond?
Well, I mean, his concerns are well-founded and his analysis is quite sound. I would say that I think a liberal or progressive by definition has to have a certain amount of optimism. And that doesn't mean optimism like sit back, everything will go fine, and there are cycles in history. No, I mean that it is possible to turn things around. Of course, it's very dispiriting to see where the state of American public opinion, especially in this age of massive disinformation, and now we're going to hand over more control to the techno-industrial complex that President Biden called out. They're now going to have no content moderation. This all happened with whatever they called content moderation, but it's their monopoly over information, and the terms of information is going to get worse in the short term. One piece of hope I would try to give to the caller is there's been very good research on nonviolent movements of civil resistance that built, restored democracy, overturned authoritarian or quasi-authoritarian regimes. And you actually statistically only need about 2.5% of the public actively involved in order to achieve it. So it's too big a question to say that we're going to transform the whole American electorate all at once. But it is completely, and this is data over the last 100 years, doable if a small but significant part. That's a lot of people, right? 2.5% of the American population is millions of people, but it is possible to change it without getting everyone all at once that you're seeing on Facebook buying into a lot of this stuff. And so but frankly, of course, we will lose if there is no civil resistance whatsoever, a movement then after that to accomplish something. Then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Are we guaranteed victory if we organize? No, it's the only way we could have victory. And it's a moral obligation to do it because, frankly, morality is about doing everything you can to create a just society, right? So I think people need to figure out how to recharge themselves and continue the fight, but we got to fight smart. And so we need to be very clear on what we need to stop and what we need to build.
Mike?
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said and then some. But the problem we've got today is we have a media that has no relationship with truth to power, none whatsoever. So the American people turn into a bobblehead. They just go, oh yeah, okay, and because the messaging is so murky and screwed up, and it's spinning our minds around in circles. It's not doing us any good. So until the American people get it that we have the power, and we do, and I talk about that all the time on the show, until we take the reins and citizens action, all we're going to do is waste our time like we have over the last 20 years because we're not paying attention.
Hey, Mike, thank you very much for the call. As always, Dr. Craig, hang on. We'll certainly come to our listeners on the other side, 855-752-4842. It's Wednesday. That means Wednesdays with the one and only Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action. He's on Capitol Hill fighting the good fight already. We'll be right back.
In the middle of a stream. Giddy up, hi-yo, yeah. Giddy up, hi-yo, silver. Don't change horses in the middle of a stream, baby. Don't change horses in the middle of a stream now. It might spoil our secret dreams, child. It might spoil our secret dreams.
Oh, yeah. On the next show, Omar the pharmacist makes his long-awaited return, and we'll talk about how we can improve your health in spite of the cold weather. All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action, is here. And you know, Dr. Craig, I understand how people have given up for the time being. You look on television and you see the beatings that those law enforcement people withstood on the Capitol grounds. And our lying eyes didn't deceive us, Dr. Craig. We see that injustice. And a person who is the president of the United States, none of us would have ever believed that we would have come to a point where that person, the president of the United States, would say, all of these people are freed, regardless of what they did, and be proud about it.
Well, I think because our theme has really been how do we keep going? How do we maintain hope?
Right.
I don't think we can be fair weather citizens, fair weather activists, or fair weather organizers. As to say, times like this call all upon us to do more and to be more effective. This is the time that, and maybe there'll be a clearing out. Some people won't have the heart for it, but we need the people who will have the heart for it to carry on this fight. So I actually think that the pardons, as shocking and disgusting as they are, and I don't know if you saw Ron Johnson trying to evade questions at the Capitol yesterday.
I reached out to him to get him on, but go ahead.
Yeah, so none of the Senate Republicans, your Rick Scotts, want to answer this question. Kevin Kramer's want to answer this question, Ron Johnson. So it's inconvenient. They're hoping they want to turn away from it. Oh, let's not talk about that. I think this was done as soon as the Supreme Court the Trump-packed Supreme Court gave Donald Trump immunity. Because if the mastermind and the perpetrator and the instigator of the crimes is immune, then it makes sense that the people who did it at his behest, at his command, would be immune, right? This flows directly from what this fake Supreme Court did. Fake because they're politicians in robes. This has nothing to do. Their decision, that is the decision that is the Dred Scott level decision, i.e. no basis in law, right? Because the founders of this country were very worried about kings and did everything to prevent one and to make the president just a normal human being subject to the same laws. They had no script, no textual basis for this, no historical basis. They made it up to protect their guy. And we need to be, the problem we've had is, and we have this at the state level as well, Earl, is that we have leaders in the Democracy Coalition, which is what the Democratic Party has become. It's broad. It doesn't agree on everything in terms of policy, but agrees we should have a democracy. Won't do what's necessary. President Biden never thought that we should add Supreme Court justices. It is not a set number in the Constitution. The president's power to add them is one of the checks on a runaway Supreme Court. He wouldn't do it, right? We've had the same in the state where Governor Evers, the first three budgets, has refused to actually fight with Republicans and has signed their budgets with some changes vetoed out by him, rather than having a budget fight, having an impasse. We're going to need that this time because our schools are criminally underfunded. Our public schools are, not the voucher schools. And we're not doing shared revenue. People can't afford childcare. Look at the climate crisis, Earl. The most significant thing the president did, and this is much more significant than pardoning some Proud Boys, and as bad as that is, he pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accords.
Right.
We have 5 years to cut emissions in half. They went down 0.02% last year in the United States, and we have record carbon in the atmosphere, according to the international readings. They're done at the top of a big mountain in Hawaii. Have been done since the 1950s. It now falls to state leaders. So will Governor Evers make sure Wisconsin cuts emissions in half in 5 years? Will he make sure we expand Badger Care and that we actually save the money in case the Republicans cut money out of Badger Care, Medicaid, so we can keep funding it, right? Will he fund our public schools, and will he fight for that? So I think we're at a moment of consequences. They're willing to go all out to grab every piece of power to defend democracy. We need to be able to do the same thing, and that includes everyone within my voice leaning into their own agency to do what they can. We need good citizens now more than ever. It's easy to be a good citizen when we're winning and we're making gains. It's harder in a situation like this.
Dr. Craig, very well said. Thank you very much as always. Keep up the good fight.
You too, Earl. Thank you for what you do.
Let us know how it goes. Thank everybody who made the show go. I'm sorry I couldn't get to you guys on the line. We'll be back on tomorrow. Up next, Jane Madnair, Greg Bach, Madnair on air. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.